So welcome to today's HR seminar, How Not to Perpetuate Bro Culture in Tech. I'm sure you've all been sent here today by your managers for some infraction you probably didn't agree with, but maybe we'll change your perspective on that by the end of today's session. It's only going to be an hour, so it's only a little bit painful, and with a little work, we'll all get through this together. Just a quick warning, just like every good work seminar, there's some videos that we're going to play, but unlike those, these are of the not safe for work variety, and if you're triggered by naughty language and inappropriate behavior, then why on earth are you in this room right now? So this is the last chance to leave. I mean it. If you are triggered by this kind of thing, then please just leave this room. I've had people bawling in this room when I give this talk, so just warning. Okay, so you're still with me. Just a few things about me. I happen to be a woman, in case you didn't notice. I was an early employee at Evernote, one of those unicorn startups in Silicon Valley that had a very similar culture to the kind that we're going to be talking about today and that we're going to be seeing. And of course, I didn't recognize it while I was there any more than our actors do in the things that I'm going to show. I was also a flight attendant at Spirit Airlines, which is an American budget airline like Jetstar or Ryanair or EasyJet that was founded by an owner of strip clubs. And it had current and former strippers as flight attendants when I was there. So when I worked there, the culture was very much still Hooters Airlines. So what is every tech company's idea of diversity? Well, I mean, first you've got Dan. I mean, he bikes to the office. He only drinks craft beer, and I mean, he has a beard, right? We all know Dan. Then we got Jake. He weight trains at a real gym. He knows the rules and can play every sport you throw at him, and he has curated stubble. Brian has a mechanical keyboard, probably Dvorak. He plays D&D, and he enters and wins mustache and beard contests. Then we've got Will. He has a founder's card membership. He day trades crypto, and he has no beard. So, I mean, we're getting really diverse here on this team. We got Dhruv. Dhruv, he's from another country. Yeah, totally diverse now. He talks about Google nonstop, and he will have whatever facial hair Google wants him to have. And then we have Girl. She's got girl parts, and that's all anybody knows about her, and that doesn't matter really. I mean, she fills the diversity quota, so I mean, it doesn't even really need to be a girl. It could be insert minority here, because as everyone knows, diversity only needs to be 20% of your team, and she's fitting that 20% right there. So I want to preface this. What is it like to be the girl in a tech company? Well, here's an inside look.
Welcome. Thank you for being here. Welcome. Do you see that sign back there? What does it say? That's rather harder now. For all the new faces, let the rest of the world give thanks on Friday. Here we say, thank God it's Monday! Thank God it's Monday! I say we, you say work. We work. We work. We work. We work. We work. We work. Come on!
Seduced by the mission of the company. But for a girl trying to fit in with a culture like this, it becomes painfully obvious that the role involves more than she might have initially thought. It might even be fun and exciting for a bit, but when practices like staying up late, drinking, going out with the team, having late night meetings, having early morning sessions, having after work sessions become expected, that's when a workplace starts to become toxic. And you may not even notice it's happening. You might not notice this, or you may be not surprised, but lurking within the Glassdoor reviews of every tech company are reviews like this. Probably within your own company are reviews like this. And you may be wondering, who's filing these reviews? It's probably people that, and you might think that it's some random person that was just really upset at someone and then left for some cause, but it might be just somebody that had a point. Someone has felt marginalized by their workplace and wants to send out a signal flare. And when that flare is lit, executives of a company see this signal has been set, they start throwing around 3 words: diversity, equity, and inclusion. But they're more than just a buzzword. Diversity is the who, inclusion is the how, equity is the what of what make people work cooperatively and collaboratively together. However, without context, it all comes down to oppressive, privilege, and marginalization. Oppression is a system that privileges one identity group while marginalizing another. Privilege may or may not be earned, but gives increased access to power and institutions like employment, housing, healthcare, education, policymaking, and it involves choices, as in the more privilege you have, the more choices, conscious or unconscious, you have. Marginalization means that you have both increased barriers to access and the increased awareness and understanding of the inequalities that go with it. It's constantly reinforced at every level of your life in many complex ways. So, unfortunately, we do not have an even playing field for all candidates. Women often apply for jobs only when they meet 100% of a job requirement. Women often underestimate their abilities and performance during interviews. 27% of transgender people say they've been fired, denied a promotion, or not hired because of their gender identity or expression. Half of transgender and non-binary people hide their identity at work for fear of reprimation. Studies show that white applicants have received more callbacks than minority applicants with identical resumes, and minority job applicants are whitening their resumes to increase the chances that they receive an interview. So the first topic that we're going to talk about today is bias. In this section, I'm going to put up some of the most common statements people have about biases so that we can dive into them. But first, I'm going to show you what some of those types of biases are. So the most common type of bias is affinity bias. That's hiring people who are the same as ourselves. Then confirmation bias is searching for evidence that backs up our first impressions. You can see how this becomes a loop. Beauty bias is judging people by the way that they look. We believe that because somebody is attractive, that they are smart, or that they have something valuable. Horn's effect bias is negative assumptions that cloud our judgment. Attribution bias is how we perceive the actions of other people. Conformity bias is how we change our perceptions based on what the group does. And the halo effect is perceiving that someone has more positive traits than others. So we put a halo over them. And affirmity and confirmation bias are the most common, but we all are subject to all of these. Now, I do want to preface by saying this, that it is not wrong to have biases. It is natural. We all suffer from having biases. This is something that everyone in this room, everyone on the planet has. This is not, I'm not here to say we are bad people. So, that said, here are some common statements that people say about biases. Implicit bias is nothing more than stereotyping. You probably heard this before, but that is incorrect. Implicit biases and stereotyping are closely related concepts that can be easily confused. Both implicit biases and stereotypes are types of associations that can be positive and negative. And it's true that they may form as a result of exposure to persistent stereotypes, but an implicit bias goes beyond stereotyping to include favorable or unfavorable impressions. Having implicit biases makes me a bad person. That is incorrect. Bias is a natural phenomenon. Everyone's brains are constantly forming automatic associations. This is just how we more efficiently understand the world around us. What is important is that we understand when those have become harmful. I'm not biased. I have diverse friends, and I believe in equal treatment. Again, we all have implicit biases. Research shows that all individuals are susceptible to harnessing these implicit biases and others based on characteristics like race, skin tone, income, sex, and weight, things like that. So the important thing is to learn, yes, we all have these, but what do we do with them? So I want to do a quick test with all of you. And yes, I really do mean this. So get out paper, pen, your phone, however you want to do this, but take a minute and write down the 10 people that you trust the most in the world. You can use your phone. Like, I know people in doing this have texted this to themselves, so they have it in the future. And yes, I really do mean for you to do this. That these can be professional or personal relationships. It doesn't matter. Just the first 10 people that pop into your head that are likely the people that you are in contact with the most, your family, your ride or die people, like if you're married, hopefully your spouse, your parents maybe. If you were in jail for something embarrassing, this would be the person that you call to get you out. If you were in something embarrassing, the person to get the porn off your computer, that kind of thing. So like this is who is your 10 most people. Got them? Okay, good. So take a look at the list. Is everybody on your list about the same? When we surround ourselves with people who are like us, we are never pressured to grow. We don't see things from different angles, and we don't challenge our own assumptions. We meet new people all the time, but an extremely small number of them actually make it into that inner circle. So look at this image and think about the people that you know and see every day. Many of them fall into level 1, which is a hi, how are you kind of relationship, and which is an acquaintanceship, not a friendship. Only 10% of the people that we meet end up in level 2, which is that 10%, which is what we'd call a friend. And level 3 is that trusted 10. Those are the ones, less than 1% of those people make it into that category. And now that you understand that your inner circle is very homogeneous, you might think twice when voting for a school board member or promoting someone on your team, voting in an election. When you find yourself immediately liking someone or something, stop and ask yourself, how similar is it to your existing worldview? Be it their age, religion, political views. Ask someone who is very different from you to offer their opinion on the same subject. The key is to listen to perspectives with an open mind. Don't think about why their view is wrong and your view is right, even if that is the case. Think about why they have a different view than you, and what can you learn from their perspective. Unfortunately, sometimes our biases can be hidden due to other issues. So in the United States, we have something called the EEOC, which gives us protected classes, and in every country in the world, we have something similar. I'm going to do this based on the US one, but yours is very similar in Australia. So we have protected classes for race, color, nation of origin, religion, people with disabilities, sex, including whether someone is pregnant, and age, and in other areas, like in Australia, also veteran status, genetic information, and citizenship are protected classes. That means that people cannot be discriminated against by law in the workplace. So what happens when this kind of thing occurs?
And now she's a rock star.
I mean, I'm an engineer, not a...
Leave her with me so I can give her the rock star treatment.
I knew I hired one at the right place.
I remember your resume. Double major from Penn in physics and... Wait, don't tell me. I love a woman who does double Penn.
Philosophy. I'm really excited to be working here. Feels like sailing over the moon.
Poetic. Where did you grow up? Where'd you go to high school?
Homeschooled. Self-taught really in Arizona.
You don't look homeschooled.
I've been studying our platform, and I already have ideas on how to begin standardizing some of our microservices.
A self-starter. You'll do well here. Just pick any spot to work and dive right in.
My girlfriend has no problem finding other partners.
It's not as easy for me since I'm always here. The whole open relationship thing's working out better for her. I decided I gotta look around here for someone. Then you walked in. LOL.
Winky face.
Oh, God. That's pretty pathetic.
It really is.
Feel kind of bad for the guy.
I don't. So easy to just not say things like that to your employees, you know?
I know. Just sounds like he's lonely, though.
But that's not really an excuse. I mean, isn't there a protocol for these kinds of situations?
You could put in a complaint. Craig will be notified. Technically, it's anonymous, but he'll probably know that it came from you.
That's my only option.
Leadership loves Craig. He's a high performer. This is a first-time offense for him. I don't really see a need to ruin his life over something so small.
I don't feel comfortable working under him.
We could switch you to a different team.
But this is the star team.
Because Craig is a star. You see?
I'm taking the team out for drinks tonight. Come with us.
I'll probably just go home.
It's got more like a team meeting. You know, we'll probably talk upcoming projects. I wouldn't want to miss it if I were you.
So there were a lot of different points of discrimination there. And I saw a lot of people shaking their heads of, yes, this has happened to me, unfortunately. First of all, he asked her about where she was from, and then made an inappropriate comment about it, and then another inappropriate comment about it, and then immediately started hitting on her as her boss. And then, unfortunately, because she's the one female on the team, there's no place for her to report it. So this is way too common in many tech companies. So how do we deal with this kind of discrimination? Well, first off, we can talk about gender. Gender is everywhere in our lives, whether we notice it or not. Gendered language exists in most cultures, and social cultural norms have been passed down for literally thousands of years to determine whether we are in a matriarchal or patriarchal society. This whole diversity and inclusion and equality thing is practically brand new compared to the societies we live in. So missteps are to be expected, but we do need to learn from them. Our society has a set of ideas about how we expect men and women to dress, how we expect them to behave, and how to present themselves. Gender roles in society mean how we're expected to act, speak, dress, groom, and conduct ourselves based on our assigned sex. For example, girls and women are generally expected to dress in feminine ways, and and they're expected to be polite and accommodating and nurturing. Men are expected to be strong, aggressive, and bold. Every society, ethnic group, and culture has gender role expectations. But this is changing, and I know it's changing too fast for a lot of us, for a lot of people to understand, especially in the workplace. So how can we deconstruct that? Well, gender binary is the false assumption that there are only two natural, immutable, and opposed genders, i.e. man and woman. In some places, it's easier now to, we have all gendered restrooms, for example. That's a great start in a workplace, but it's also confusing in some workplaces where you go in and you're like, what do I do? So these are things that it's good to talk about when you're confused. And the best thing to do is talk when you're confused. Gender expression is one's outward expression of gender through cultural forms such as language, gestures, and artifacts. And gender identity is one's internal understanding of their own gender. So the things that we're going to come in contact with most often are the physical spaces, like gender restrooms, social activities, like masculine sports versus feminine sports and things like that, career choices, expecting one field like human resources to be a woman's work versus engineering to be men's jobs, parenting roles, and spending habits, sports and recreation. So we have things in our mind that we associate with gender all the time, that we have these biases for. And because of that, we end up with a hiring and promotion gap. A lot of people around the world, like women are 20% of the global IT workforce. 20%. There's that 20% number again, that diversity, equity, and inclusion number. People are like, yay, 20%, we hit the number, we're done, good. But that's up from 11% in 2013. This is worldwide. So we've gone from 11% in 2013 to 20% now worldwide. And that's because of DEI programs around the world forcing people to hire. And I do mean forcing. 48% of the women have less than 3 years experience in these roles. Now, if you know any job descriptions that you've applied for, most of them are requiring 4, 5, 6 years of experience in most of these roles that people are trying to apply for, which makes it hard for any woman to get a job in most engineering roles or IT roles. So one of the problems that keep women or minority candidates, insert minority here when I say women, is that they don't have the background, they don't have the experience to apply for the roles, so they aren't able to get them in the first place. And it's the same problem that all of us had when we came out of school. How do you get a job when you didn't have the experience for the job in the first place? And that leads to a compensation gap. So we've all heard of the wage gap. We've all heard people saying the wage gap doesn't exist. The wage gap does exist. At one point, I was paid 63% less than the next person in my company. I obviously left that company when I found that out. But yeah, so I mean, the average is this. And here it is in developing nations. Australia is actually better than the USA. Yay. We're right in the middle. We're not as bad as South Korea, but New Zealand has everybody beat. They're almost on pay parity. The gender pay gap measures the difference between average earnings of women and men in the workplace. So it's an internationally established measure of women's position in the economy in comparison to men. So for example, in Australia, women earn an average of 18% less than men for the same job. So for example, for a man that's earning $100,000 a year, a woman would be earning $82,000 a year. And that causes, the buying power of that is like a man can buy more and support his family better than a woman can for the same thing. Oh, and in the corner there, this is a systematic worldwide and top-down. Of the 198 countries in the world, there are 20 countries who have had a female leader currently. Last I checked, there's some elections going on, so it might have changed in the last week or two. And only 33 countries have ever had a female leader that's president, prime minister, queen. So only 33 ever have had a female leader. So there isn't much incentive to change it. But gender isn't the only place where people face discrimination. Another common place for workplace discrimination is race and religion. Workplace discrimination is more common than you think. In the UK, for example, 1 in 2 people have been discriminated against, and in the US, 2 out of 3. While I don't have the numbers for Australia, I haven't been able to find them, they're likely similar. So if you haven't experienced this yourself, just turn to the left, and the person next to you probably has. you'll see the faces of the oppressed in this room right here. But that doesn't mean that all these people have reported it. In fact, quite the opposite. Most people who are discriminated against don't report the issue for fear of reprisal. Some people are even under the impression that if they report it, they'll lose their job. And they're most likely right, because in many cases, if they're not fired directly for this, they're forced out because of the repercussions of creating a hostile workplace. Now, racial equity is corrective justice for communities that have suffered oppression. It's the systematic fair treatment of people of all races, resulting in equitable opportunities and outcomes for all. It's not just the absence of discrimination and inequalities, but also the presence of deliberate systems and supports to achieve and sustain racial equity. Unique historical events which serve to systematically oppress Aboriginal, Black, and Indigenous people, such as massive resistance, continue to have an effect on student success and their resultant career path. It goes back to education. In other words, lack of access to the same opportunities at fundamental stages of life put minority candidates at disadvantages compared to their privileged peers. The foundational experiences and perspectives will likely be different from yours. Another place that causes privilege bias is in language discrimination. In current and former Commonwealth countries like Australia, there's a bias towards English-speaking candidates and what is considered proper grammar. However, this causes an implicit bias against anyone who might speak English as a second language, or has heavily accented speech, or simply just doesn't have great social skills. In France and Sweden, minority applicants need to send 70 to 95% more resumes than white applicants to receive the same number of responses for interviews. In Germany and the US, minority applicants need to send out 25 to 40% more. So we need to do better. Realistically, people think that we have changed. Like, we think that we can give ourselves a pat on the back because of all of, like, apartheid is over, affirmative action is in, all of these things. We're not doing better. In fact, it's almost gone downhill since the 60s, since the 80s, all of that. But here's what the current picture is for Australia. Well, it's not perfect, it's definitely getting better. However, you do need to be cautious. While job descriptions are actually getting better, to attract more female employees, they're actually starting to become more discriminatory towards men. By using over-feminized language, it's creating a less equitable work environment, so men are being forced out of positions or being forced out of roles so you need to, depending on what you're going for, that may be fine, but it is possible to overcorrect. In fact, I'll get into that later about how to make sure that your job descriptions are equitable. So how does this make the culture work?
Something uncomfortable happened with my team leader on my first day. I reported it to HR, but she told me I either had to suck it up or switch teams. Plus then, like, I'm the one being punished for the shit he did, his misconduct.
I feel for you, I do, and I fucking relate. The situation sucks. But you chose Uber, not the ACLU. We basically signed up to work in the middle of Mardi Gras. We're not gonna show our tits for a bunch of beads, but there's nothing we can do to stop the parade.
So a lot of us who have been in this kind of situation have gone for help and found the exact same kind of wall. The people that have been in that same environment, in that culture, while not condoning it, are not helping it. They feel they may have given up, or they feel that there's no way to change it. So in that case, it can cause something called the leaky pipeline, which I'll get into in a second. So a candidate who works well with your team and adds value to the company culture is great. Unfortunately, looking for the wrong kind of cultural fit can lead to that kind of discrimination that we've been seeing. Cultural fit doesn't mean that the candidate shares a personal culture with your team, but instead that he or she fits the values of the corporate culture. And those values come from the top down. And of course, when we say culture fit in a tech company, what we generally mean is someone like this. I mean, how else are we going to end up with the best type of culture that attracts all the best tech bros? Working at a tech company can honestly seem like one never-ending game of bingo. But unfortunately, every game piece is based on the underwhelming number of diverse people in tech. So it's almost impossible to win unless you're already a bro. The dangers of culture fit. A good fit often means the same as, but culture fit is not a common educational, cultural, or career background. It's not a sense of comfort and familiarity with coworkers. It's not shared enjoyment of such perks as ping pong, craft beer, dogs in the office, yoga balls. What it is a shared enthusiasm about the organization's mission or purpose. It's been proven that when a team consists of people of different genders, ethnicities, cultural backgrounds, sexual orientations, it produces more creative, innovative, and effective results. Diverse cultural perspectives can drive innovation. Working with people who are different from you may challenge your brain and sharpen its performance. So all of these things together can mean more engagement and productivity. So when you're trying to figure out what cultural fit is, ask a candidate if they've demonstrated the traits that you're looking for in their past. Consciously avoid basing fit on whether they act, look, or speak similarly to your existing employees. And of course, you have to avoid asking them those discriminatory questions like, where'd you go to school? Like, is your dad a Mason? Like all those things like that you always the things you ask your Uber driver, you cannot ask your employees. So things still happen in an office.
Something happened last night. I was talking to Gil, and he touched me.
The person on the left is playing Travis Kalanick,
Yeah, I'm good.
CEO of Uber.
I want to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Okay. I need to know exactly what happened.
Can I get a Diet Coke with a lime?
I will have what she's having, but put rum in mine. Hey, we should totally go for a walk on that beach path.
And they are on a
I
work
stopped
trip.
him, but yeah,
Yeah, that never should happen.
I really wish it hadn't.
So don't worry. I'll take care of you. Okay, I got it. I'm gonna dismantle that motherfucker.
Travis said that you were upset the other night in LA.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, like, I was drunk, so. You went to our fucking boss? Like, I thought you had balls.
sorry, balls?
You're employee number 4. I thought you were down. For fuck's sake.
Hey, TK.
Yeah.
That thing we talked about, the Gil situation?
Yeah.
You handled it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I told him to knock it off. And if he didn't, then I would punch his ticket out of here and out of the whole legal profession.
That's it?
What else? He's not gonna do it again. If he does, you should let me know.
Well, maybe that doesn't mean so much coming from the boober guy. It's just kind of hard to do my job when I'm surrounded by creeps. You hire the asshole every time, and then you let them do and say whatever the fuck they want, and you're not the one who has to pay the price. I am.
What would you like me to do? Fire him? Look, if I fired every asshole in here, there'd be no one left.
So when the culture comes top down, and the CEO has a policy of hiring only assholes, this is what happens. If the culture is set by the leaders of, and this is the woman earlier that was saying, this is what we deal with, this is how we have to be here. What does she expect when she's going to the leader of the company asking for help? There is no help. You just have to suck it up because that's the culture. And so that's how we end up with, why does my thing stop working? Sorry. Something called the Leaky Pipeline. Now, in tech, there are so many different ways that women have, and minority candidates, have been marginalized. We have, at hackathons, products like Titstare have come up. If you haven't heard of this lovely thing, it was basically an AI that recognized women's breasts and then created a camera that would look at them and then record that. At Black Hat every year in Las Vegas, which is a security conference, there is a strip show where female engineers or female security researchers are judged based on their bodies. There's also booth babes. I actually started out as a booth babe in tech. That was my first job. That was how I got into tech. There's the programmer culture, which is what we're here talking about today. There's so many things. And then Gamergate. So what do these people have in common? They're all attractive, they're all famous in our circles, and they were all involved in Gamergate. However, the people on the left were doxxed and harassed and targets of all of the vitriol of the gamers, and the people on the right were not. And what is the difference? I think you can tell. Why does this kind of thing happen? Well, I'll let our friend Susan explain.
My name is Susan Fowler. After a month of floating in Uber limbo, I found a new team, and it's a great one. That's my new manager, Kevin. I chose this team because it's 25% women, which, paltry as it is the highest ratio in the company. Kevin's great, but he hasn't inured me to the realities of working here. I could call it out. I could make up 20 small dick jokes and hurl them at the likely offenders. Better to just make it disappear. But this, the old familiar ass ogling, that I cannot erase. So I get to report that to HR. Again, not that they'll respond. Here's a descriptor that's gonna land like a giant turd. Toxic. I'm the first to admit toxic has lost all meaning in the general sense. That's why we have to tell our stories. The specifics matter, because each specific is another human pushed that much closer to the edge. Take Allison, a kick-ass engineer from Caltech. She's leaving because her team leader constantly double-checks her work. He says she's too hot to be a good engineer. Fran didn't even come back to the office the day after her team held an all-hands at an all-nude strip club, and they dubbed her No Fun Fran. Grace is such a brilliant programmer, she's had her work stolen by our SVP 5 times. Each time she reported it, he thanked her for taking one for the team, then promoted mediocre men over her. Understandably, she lost her shit. Now she's crazy. Literally half of you are looking at me like I'm the most strict / least fun teacher you had in middle school. I just ruined your fucking treehouse club at recess when I found your dirty magazines. I make you remember how you had to push down your damned hard-ons or whatever in your corduroys and go back to class. But the other half of you, well, sure, some of you are the get-along-to-go-along types and would like me to shut up. But the rest know the truth. That no matter how hard you tried to fit in, you just don't belong. And that's because they don't want you to. Only 6 women left.
Great job, guys. Crushed the monolith. Here's the thing, ladies. We bought the guys' jackets in bulk. We couldn't justify purchasing 6 jackets at full cost for the women. Wouldn't be fair.
But it's fair to not have leather jackets for us. I'll take that one, even if it's too big and
That's Craig's.
Kevin, this is wrong. We're just asking.
Before you go there, let me just say, if you want equality, you'd realize you're getting it by not getting jackets. What if it were the other way around?
Kevin is pretending to not understand there would never be an instance in tech where women would outnumber the men. I'm applying for my promotion and getting the fuck off his team. This is about my pushback over the leather jackets.
You're not the only one with aspirations here, Fowler. If you don't tamp down your behavior,
What's your game plan here, Kevin?
She thinks I'm sabotaging her, but obviously I'm not. She's got to learn to control herself. I mean, you see it, right?
Of course you do, don't you? And Kevin, he isn't the worst rat in the lab. But he wants his rewards. Instead of sugar, it's advancement and the feeling of being powerful in a culture that not only encourages, but celebrates subterfuge. Kevin had no choice but to deliberately undermine my score. To be clear, I'm not apologizing for Kevin. Kevin fucking sucks. And I know what you're thinking. What happened to sticking it out and changing things? I tried. I really did. I followed protocol. I told Anne-Marie and HR everything about Allison, Fran, and Grace, the leather jackets, my lowered score. And you know what she said to me? She said that by reporting every incident of harassment, I was creating a toxic work environment.
If you would like to learn more about Susan Fowler and all of those very true incidents, she has a book that I have on the resources page at the end. But you can look up Susan Fowler, and she speaks around the world. She has TED Talks. She has wonderful speeches as well. But while these are dramatizations, they are not over-dramatizations.
I worked at Huddle in London, same office as Uber. The Uber guys were rude, obnoxious, genuinely didn't thank you for opening the door, launched you out the way out of it. It was unbelievable, the culture of Uber, and it was just through the whole company. It was really weird, because I've never seen it so clearly in my life. And I didn't work with it. We were just having to share the same floor in the office.
Yeah. And that's the example of top-down culture, and it's unfortunately, it's not just Uber, but it's a great one to use as a case study. So how do we try to make that not happen? So as I mentioned before, sometimes there's an overcorrect. So when we're writing inclusive job ads, those wording and labels matter. We want to align the roles and responsibilities. We want to change male-based phrasing, which they're doing a really good job in Australia. We want to change things like we're looking for strong to we're looking for exceptional, who thrive in a competitive atmosphere to who are motivated by goals, things like that. Candidates who are assertive to candidates who are go-getters. So change those male-oriented things over to more neutral terms. But also, you want to change those female-focused words to more neutral terms as well. So things like we're a community of concerned to we are a team focused on, have a polite and pleasant style, because remember I said women are expected to be polite and pleasant, to are professional and courteous, because that's more neutral, and things like who nurture and connect with customers, because I mean, like what man is going to apply to something that is asking you to be nurturing, right? So to provide great customer service, that's more neutral. So you want to make sure that the language that you use in a job description is asking for the most inclusive candidate that you want. Now, of course, when I was hired as a booth babe, I was hired by reverse discrimination, because part of the job role was you had to fit in the 7 of 9 suit. and they were like, the men were really upset because it was a half game designer, half community engineer role. And like the one requirement that they couldn't fit was they couldn't fit into the 7 of 9 costume, and I could. So I got the job and they didn't. But so sometimes it is okay to have requirements that are female or male only. But for most jobs, like, I mean, if it's a developer, you can have an inclusive requirement. So also consider which adjectives you're using and why. So like, if you're using an energetic categorizer, then that's ableist language too. So if you want somebody that's, I mean, if you're saying you want someone that's energetic, well, what if somebody isn't energetic? Like, does that mean that they're not the right person for the job? So you have to be very careful with, and I don't mean to sound woke either. I'm just saying, like, all of these things are discriminatory and we don't even realize it. So you just have to be the more you're aware that you are accidentally discriminating against people, the less likely you will do it. And another thing is, your hiring manager will have an unending list of qualifications in mind for a given role. But when you're when you're creating a job listing, just put the actual things that are required. Because most people will spend 45 seconds reading a job listing. And if it takes you more than 45 seconds, then the person's going to move on. And remember what I said before, how women will only apply to a job if they feel they're like 100% qualified for it. So if you've got this whole long post that has like a million things and you want them to like know Fortran, like then nobody's going to apply. But like a guy will apply to every single thing they see. And they don't even read the post. They're just like, oh, I want to work at that company, and apply to everything on the careers page. So it doesn't matter what you put in there. Just put your exact requirements. Like, what are the 3 things that they really need to know? Because everyone knows in every job that you've ever done, most of the learning came after you got the job, not before you had it. Even half of the skills that you learn, you got after it. So, oh, and depending on what country, this may or may not be legal, but I always try to list the salary in my posting, or at least a range. Like wherever it's, because I don't want to waste time on a candidate where we're just completely out of the realm of what they need. I had somebody the other day that was looking for $400,000 a year for a job where I'm offering $150,000 a year, because they were just coming from Google and they were expecting Google salary for a company that I'm not Google. And they were just like, okay, you go find another company that's going to pay you that. I don't know who is, but whatever. You got fired from Google. But yeah, if you put the salary requirements, then like and the benefits too, because a lot of women will more likely apply if they know how much the range is. And a lot of men don't care anyway because they haven't read that far in the post. So, you know it's true. So, and you want to reframe the requirements from what do you need as a company to what they're going to get from the job. Because that way it's a more inclusive kind of thing. So like, instead of saying like, we want to advance the creation of learning things and we want to learn, assess, like you want to give people an opportunity. Because this is, think of a job description as you're selling your company like to the person, and you want to create a team environment. You want to create a good culture. You don't want to create that Uber culture. And so, yeah, so basically state the values up front, explain the opportunity, put your required qualifications, and then state the salary up front if you're allowed to where you are. But I mean, if you are allowed to, then just do it, even just a range. Or make sure that the job title matches something where they can look it up elsewhere, like what are they expecting. But the ad itself is not enough. Having thought about the value of diversity and written an ad that reflects this is not enough, because if you build it, they're still not going to come. You have to recruit diverse candidates in places where they're at, because a lot of people today, if you're thinking about where you are online, you're not thinking about where they're online, where they're going. So make calls to colleagues and ask them to put forth candidates, and make calls to their colleagues to do the same. Look for diverse candidates in your current company and higher up. Attend diversity job fairs, conferences, and networking events. Contact professional organizations and advertise on any job boards they have. Go to churches. Churches, like bulletin boards at churches, are actually a great place to find diverse candidates. Go to employee resource groups and communities of practice. Find programs that support marginalized groups. Again, churches are a great place to find those people, those support groups. Partner with boot camps. So let's check in on how those reviews are doing after making changes. So, yeah. A lot of people these are companies now that have had diversity and inclusion programs, but still not much of a change. I wonder what's happening with them. So maybe it goes down to the interviewing. You got to remember still when you're interviewing that you have to pay attention to unconscious bias. Innocent rapport-building questions, like the kind of things we ask our Uber drivers, may be construed as discrimination if the candidate doesn't get hired. So help protect yourself and the company by focusing solely on performance-based questions. In the next few slides, you'll find a few common tricky questions and better ways to gather the information you need. So these are some great questions to ask about family life. Actually, no. These questions elicit a response about the candidate's personal life and living situation, which violate Pregnancy Discrimination Act. So for rapport, instead ask, what are some professional goals that you've set for yourself this year? Tell me about the method that you've used. And to assess if they can meet job requirements, ask, can you work overtime or travel if needed? Those are questions that are safe to ask. For race and nation, color of origin. So you can totally not ask any of those. Asking candidates a question that would cause them to reveal their national origin violates civil rights acts. But you can ask, I see that you work or live in where, what is your favorite thing about that place? Or are you authorized to work where they need to work? You can ask those questions, but you can't ask about what you're hearing in their accents and things like that. Oh, and absolutely, you can totally not ask any of those. These questions violate Disabilities Act and also not only are they potentially wrong, but they're definitely illegal in almost every country. So what you can ask is, can you perform all of the job aspects safely and satisfactorily? Because that's really what you need to get down to. So if you're worried that the person that you're interviewing that has one arm can't lift the thing that you need to do or can't operate the forklift, then you just need, rather than just assuming they can't, ask them, can you perform the aspects of this job safely and satisfactorily? And if they say, absolutely, yes, I can, then you're good. Okay, so we do have to worry about how we can communicate, because it is, even talking today, I'm dancing around different words and ways to talk, and it can be very hard to talk to people. So there's so many communication traps that we have, like blaming others for difficulties and not shining light on your own communication style is one that we all have. A lot of people have poor nonverbal communication. They use inappropriate tones of voices. There's inattentive listening with interrupting, talking over, criticizing, making assumptions before checking facts, like in interviews, and criticizing more than praising. So these are things that you have to make sure that you're avoiding because they can all lead towards discriminatory behavior. And even more. Basically, every time we open our mouth, we risk getting in trouble. I know I have to worry about this all the time, and I'm a CTO, and I've been a manager of people for over 20 years now. So I've definitely had to sit in HR meetings for things that I didn't even realize I did. So trust me, I am not immune to any of these things. Indirect communication is something, workplace gossip is one of the worst things ever, but so many people just do it and they don't even realize it, especially when, it's terrible. If you don't deal with issues directly, this can cause tons of discrimination issues. Hijacking someone else's idea. Every woman in this room has had that happen to them. And probably other people too, but definitely all the women. Any kind of harassment or bullying is bad. Verbal abuse, unfiltered comments or jokes, things that were totally fine 20 years ago are definitely not fine anymore. So, and things change by the day too. Words that we were able to use just a year ago, we can't use anymore. So it's basically just don't open your mouth and you'll maybe be fine, but then who knows? So it's, like I said at the beginning of this, it's a work in progress. Don't feel bad about yourself. We are all learning constantly, but it's more about being aware that you could possibly be discriminating or being discriminated against. Studies have shown that, surprise, surprise, men interrupt more than women do in meetings, and that women are interrupted more than men in meetings. But women who have advanced in technology careers have learned how to interrupt people. So, and if you're from New York like I am, you just did this naturally your entire life. So that's probably why I'm a CTO. People often don't give women credit for the ideas they have. So if you notice this happening to someone else in your room, whether you're a woman or a man, and again, like I said, if you are hearing women, just insert minority here, say things like, I like the way you agreed with her for her point earlier. So just try and help out when you see this happening so that you can be an ally. And maybe that person will notice that they did it. And also counterbalance the fact that some people just don't speak up. Their social skills might not be the same. And so disrupt the way meetings are run by calling on other people. So that actually helps to cut down on discriminatory behavior. Another thing is environment. Now, a lot of us may still be working from home because we have the privilege to have those kind of jobs. But the environment, it's important to gender-proof your team's work zones. So when you're faced with the relentlessly tough job of attracting and retaining minorities, as every tech startup is, creating work environments where other types of people can thrive is an often ignored but highly effective strategy. So what you want to do is like ditch the boys' toys like Nerf guns and things like that. Use light, neutral palettes. Avoid overly dark color schemes. Although I myself would prefer just like a black room with no closet. With no windows and all that, but that's just me. Like have real plants in the office. Have quiet zones, have soft furnishings, and like have an air conditioner setting that like is at a normal temperature, or at least let the women have heaters and don't laugh at them for it, because we really do have different thermoregulation. It's not just a joke. So yeah, we have a lower metabolic rate than you. Sorry, our hearts are really ice. This helps to create a sense of belonging for everyone. And again, those feelings are from the top down. This has to come from the top. If your leadership is asking for diversity and equity and inclusion programs, if they're asking for this kind of thing, then you have to make them mean it. You have to come every day and you have to show them that those values are there. Then you also have to remember that accessibility and flexibility comes. So it requires an awareness and openness to consider the needs of the different people that you have. So you can't start making fun of Jamie for having to leave the office at 4 p.m. every day because he have to take his kids to soccer practice because he's the father that's taking care of the kids. You can't be mad that he's the parent that's the caretaker and not the wife. Like, these are things that have reverse discrimination, and it happens. So be careful that you're not discriminating in the wrong ways. Now, COVID-19 has caused setbacks and challenges in the pipeline as well. The deaths exceeded over, I think, 10 million now, more than that, with more than 500 million infections. And unfortunately, it's caused a disproportionate amount of women to leave the pipeline because they have been caring for the family. And even in the remote workers, like those of us that are still staying home, disproportionately the women are still taking care of the kids and haven't returned to work. So we are going to have a huge diversity issue for years to come because of this. So in order to help create a culture of openness and action, there are so many things to do. But the main thing, as if we've learned anything from Travis Kalanick and Uber, is don't be an asshole. So, I mean, be kind to yourself, be kind to others, respect others' differences, and just be kind. So by making all these changes, by really focusing top down, let's check on how our companies are doing. That's great. We're out of the one-star reviews. It's actually making a difference. It takes time to see change, but we actually will see change, and companies will want to start working for you if they see that there's movement, if they see that you're really trying to make a difference and that you care about this top down. So here's those resources I promised you. One thing that I really want to point out, besides Susan Fowler's book there, is Project Implicit. There's a lot of implicit bias tests on there, and you will find, to your dismay, that you are probably biased in many, 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 many ways. That's okay. Again, it's totally okay. But yeah, this will help. This will open your eyes to a lot of different things. Susan Fowler's book is great. If you don't want to spend time reading it, then watch her TED Talk or one of her many videos. But there's so many ways. I mean, the fact that you came here today was great, and it's a good start. But thank you so much for coming. Congratulations for succeeding, successfully passing today's HR seminar. And I'm sure that you have many things to take back to your company, and you'll never have any problems with discrimination again. So give yourselves a round of applause.